Hi and welcome to part 2 of the video. In part 1, some of you may recall that I pointed out some white deposits near where the cylinder head meets the cylinder block. I've been assured by a very reliable source that this is nothing to worry about. It's where the paint has actually chipped off and it caused a little bit of corrosion on the aluminium. I brushed it off, taken it down to bare metal, painted it so it's now protected. In this part of the video I'm going to drain the gear oil. I'm then going to drop the leg, change the impeller, grease everywhere where necessary, put everything back together and then test it to make sure that everything's running okay. Hopefully again I will learn something, and hopefully you will learn something along with me. I hope that you enjoy the video. So to drain the gear oil, obviously have a suitable container for it to drain into, and using a good decent size, the correct size flat screwdriver, you undo the bottom screw or the bottom plug, carefully taking that out, not letting it drop into the bucket. Put that in a safe place. There should be a little washer here. I'll wait till it's drained out and then see if I can get that washer out. Then you undo this top oil level plug, which will help it drain slightly quicker. Oh, that's tight. So again, carefully taking that off, not letting it roll away to drop away anywhere, and the gear oil should freely flow. Now it's looking, although it's very dark, there's not any bits, there's no bits of metal, it is just darker oil. There are a couple of bits in there, but not many. Certainly nothing to cause concern. So I'll leave that to drain off for a while. So now that the gear oil has completely changed, I'll be able to drop the lower leg so that I can replace the impeller. To drop the leg, I'm going to remove the prop just to make things easier, just so that that's out the way. There are 4 10mm bolts to this side, there's 2 the other side which I'll need to undo, and then there's this gear linkage here. The gear linkage is held on with 2 pins. You remove the top pin, this pin here, it's a 3mm pin. I've got a 3mm punch which you need to tap out. Try not to tap it so that the pin comes flying out the other side. You just want it to be loose on the other side, and if it does drop out, it'll drop straight on the floor and not go flying across the workshop floor, because I shall be reusing these pins. Right, let me just see if I can just give it a pull. Yep, okay. So as I said, these pins are very small, and if it goes flying across the workshop floor, you may have great difficulty finding it. So I've removed the prop. Now we need to undo the 4 bolts to slide the lower leg off. These are the 4 bolts here, just 10mm bolts, 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. Once these bolts are undone, the leg should slide down, and I shall put it on the workbench so that we can get access to the impeller. You may have noticed that I've actually tilted the outboard up before I undo this last bolt. I just suddenly realised, with it being in the down position, the lower leg might actually fall, go onto the floor and crack the gear casing. So I've tilted it up so that I can take out this last bolt without it falling down, and then hopefully it should slide out quite easily. Good. Before I replace those bolts, I will clean them up, and I'll put a little bit of marine grease on them. So I'm hoping now this should just slide. Oh, well, it does just slide out. So why isn't that coming? You know, in all the manuals that I've read, it does say to take out this top pin. However, I think it's not coming out because the bottom pin is stopping it from sliding out. So I'm going to take out this bottom pin as well. Taking out the bottom pin as well, and hopefully now it should. Oh, there we go. Is it? Oh, there we go. Right. So that is the lower leg now off. Now I'll put it on the workbench. That was actually quite stiff in there. As I said, all of the literature that I've read and the couple of videos that I've also watched have said that you only need to take one pin out, and that was the top one. Personally, I think you should have to take out the bottom pin, because that came out after I took out the bottom pin. Could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So this is the impeller housing, which is held in place by 4 10mm bolts, which obviously need to be removed to expose the impeller. So in theory, this water pump housing should now just slide off, which it does. And this is the impeller in its little housing. Now inside here there will be a key to drive the impeller. Now that's the key. It's very small. Keep it safe so that you can reuse it. And this is the impeller, which, to be fair, looks very, very clean, and not marked at all. Okay, so yes, it looks very good. Just as a point, the vanes of the impeller were actually all pointing in a clockwise direction, and it when you replace the impeller, it's important that the new impeller, the vanes also move in a clockwise direction. So we shall take this impeller out. Check the impeller housing. There's no scores, there's no marks, there's nothing on there. This impeller actually doesn't need changing. I am going to change it simply for the fact that I've exposed it now, so I might as well change it. I will clean all of this here and put the new impeller in. I've noticed in my new impeller kit, this is the new impeller, that with the kit actually came a new gasket and also a new drive key for the impeller, so I will be using those. Let's take this old gasket off, clean up the surface. I've cleaned the impeller housing and taken off the old gasket and putting a new gasket on. You can see the old impeller and the new impeller. There's there's not a great deal of difference, but I am going to replace it. Before I actually do put the new impeller into its housing, I'm just going to smear just a little bit of marine grease on the inside of the impeller housing. That's just so that when it first starts up with no water in it, it's not bone dry. So making sure that the vanes go the way, face in a clockwise direction, which is the way that the old impeller came out, which is not as easy to do as you would think. Okay, that's the new impeller in. The vanes are facing in a clockwise direction. I shall now put the key, the drive key, into the little flap where it should go. We point that forwards. Then with the groove that's in the impeller, that also facing forwards, slide it down the drive shaft, or slide it down the shaft I should say. And make sure that it marries up with that key, which it does. Okay, so now let's put the housing back on. Housing slides over the top and down. I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on these bolts, not too much, just a little bit. One, 2, 3, 4. Right, I shall now tighten the 10mm bolts up. All the bolts in, make sure they are hand tight. Then a little nip on each. Oop. Okay, that impeller should now be good for another 100 hours. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on this drive shaft, just to protect it, and it'll slide in just that little bit easier when I replace it. A little bit of grease on this shaft as well. Right, let's get the lower leg back onto this outboard. Okay, let's put this lower leg back in. Theoretically, everything should line up, and it should just slide back. Make sure that this linkage is lined up. Right, good. So that's the lower leg back in. I clean these bolts, and I put just a wipe of grease on them. Not too much. It's just to make sure that they don't corrode. Just put these bolts in. after tightening these the 4 bolts, the next job is to replace the drift pins that connect the gear change linkage. Now these are very, very fiddly and not in a good place. That's both pins in. Good. The next job is to replace the prop after I've cleaned up these splines a little bit and applied a bit of grease. So the prop's now back on. I've checked the anode and that is fine. There's certainly no need to replace that. I'm now going to just drop the outboard down, and then the next jobs that I have to do is to grease it all up and to fill the gearbox with oil. After that, I need to get it in a tank of water and test it and make sure that everything is working as it should be. Okay, so now we're towards the latter stages of the service, and we need to fill up the gear oil. Before I fill up the gear oil, I need to put 2 new fibre washes on the plugs that fit here and fit here. There's the code for the fibre washers, so I shall fit those before I start filling up the gear oil. And this is the gear oil that I've been supplied with. It says Suzuki Marine. It's actually by Motul, so it's a good quality gear oil. First of all, I just need to remove this end so that the oil will flow. Now you insert it at the bottom. I'm not too sure why. The only thing that I can presume, the reason why it's filled from the bottom, is so that it expels the air at the top and no air gets trapped in the gear case. So you keep filling until the oil comes out of this oil level hole here. Taking the oil through until it's flowing freely from the top here without any air bubbles. A few air bubbles there. That should keep on. Now it's flowing freely with no air bubbles. I can still hear air coming out there. So insert the rest of the oil, or fill with the rest of the oil. There we go. Now it's coming out. Right, now it's out. Insert the top plug. The top plug in. And then quickly put the bottom plug in. That's the bottom plug in, and tighten them both up. Now that is the gear case full of new clean gear oil.